I had always believed that dreams should be guarded like treasures. Spoken too early, they lose their power. My mother used to whisper to me, "Zara, not everyone celebrates your victories. Some clap for you only to measure how far ahead you've gone." So when I finally bought my first home, I did it quietly, almost secretly. It wasn't just any house. It was the kind of place I dreamed about as a child, standing on tiptoe, peeking through the gates of rich people's compounds in Abuja. A modest two-story house, painted cream with a maroon roof, its front porch framed by bougainvillea vines. It wasn't grand, but to me, it was freedom. A sanctuary I had bled for, working overtime at the bank, saving every naira, saying no to parties, and enduring the whispers of family who mocked me for living simply. No one knew I had signed the papers. Not my cousins, not my neighbors, not even my elder sister, Halima, the one person I once trusted with everything. That silence was intentional, because Halima had a way of turning my joy into her theater. She had been the golden child, the one who stole spotlights without effort. When I graduated top of my class, she announced her engagement the same week, and suddenly my achievement faded into background noise. When I got my promotion at the bank, she threw a gender reveal party so extravagant that my colleagues who attended forgot to even mention my success. It wasn't always malice, but Halima had a knack for making her presence louder than mine. So this time, I told no one. I planned to furnish the house slowly, one room at a time. I even imagined the first night I'd sleep there, in silence, without ceremony, with just me, the cool tiled floor, and the sense that I had arrived. But life has a way of mocking careful plans. It was on a Saturday evening, a week after I got the keys, that everything unraveled. I had gone to the house after work, planning to clean the dusty living room before moving in my first set of furniture. As I approached the street, I heard music, loud, jubilant music, floating through the air. At first, I assumed it came from a neighbor's compound. But as I drew closer, the bass thumped harder, voices rose, and I noticed something that made my heart freeze. My house. My quiet sanctuary. The gates were wide open. I slowed down, clutching my handbag, my mind racing. Had someone broken in? Did the agents make a mistake? Then I saw balloons, red, gold, and white, tied to the iron bars of my gate. A banner fluttered above the entrance. "Congratulations on the new home, Halima." For a second, my body went numb. My eyes blurred, refusing to believe what I was seeing. People were streaming in and out of my compound, dressed in colorful Ankara, carrying trays of food, snapping selfies at the entrance like it was a celebrity event. The laughter was loud, unbothered, almost mocking. I walked forward, trembling, until I reached the gate. That was when I saw her. Halima. Dressed in a glittering gold gown, her head wrap styled high, she stood at the center of the compound, surrounded by guests. She was holding a microphone, her voice amplified over rented speakers. "And I just want to thank everyone for joining me today. This house is proof that when God blesses you, He does it openly. Welcome to my new home." My knees nearly gave way. I wanted to scream, to run into the compound and rip the microphone from her hands. But all I could do was stand there, invisible among the cheering crowd. She was claiming it. My house. The dream I had fought for silently, protecting it like fragile glass, was being paraded as her achievement. The betrayal wasn't just in the lie she told. It was in how comfortably she wore it, as though she had earned every brick, every nail. I finally forced my feet forward, my voice breaking as I called her name. "Halima!" The microphone squealed as she turned, and the crowd's chatter dimmed. Her eyes widened for just a moment, just enough for me to see guilt flicker, but she quickly masked it with a smile. "Sister Zara! Everyone, please welcome my younger sister," she said, waving her hand dramatically, as if I were a planned part of her show. Guests clapped politely, some murmuring, "She looks just like her." My chest burned. "What is this?" I asked, my voice trembling. Halima walked toward me gracefully, her smile still plastered on. She leaned closer, lowering her voice so only I could hear. "Don't embarrass yourself here," she whispered. "We'll talk later." Later? My entire being was on fire. "This is my house, Halima! My house!" Gasps rippled through the guests. A few people exchanged uneasy glances. Halima, unfazed, tightened her grip on my arm and laughed loudly, as if I'd made a joke. "Oh, she's just teasing me. You know how sisters are," she said into the microphone, brushing it off. But her eyes, when they met mine, were cold steel. The rest of the evening felt like drowning in slow motion. I wanted to scream, to call the police, to drag every guest out by force. But I was paralyzed, trapped by the weight of eyes watching me, waiting to see how I would react. Halima had turned the compound into a stage, and I was the unprepared actor in her play. I watched as she cut a ribbon at the entrance, as guests cheered and poured champagne. I saw children playing on the staircase I had dreamed of climbing each morning. I saw strangers dropping envelopes of money into a decorated box, congratulating her on the milestone. And I felt something break inside me. I slipped out quietly before the party ended. My silence was not weakness, though it felt like it. It was strategy. Because I knew one thing about Halima: she thrived on spectacle. If I fought her publicly, she'd twist the story until I looked like the jealous sister trying to steal her shine. But in the quiet of my car, gripping the steering wheel with tears streaming down my face, I vowed one thing: she would not steal this dream from me. Not this time. That night, I drove back to my mother's house, where I was still staying while preparing to move. I didn't sleep. I paced the room until dawn, replaying every detail. How had she known? I hadn't told a soul. Not a single word had slipped from my lips. Unless I remembered the agent, the property documents, the bank transaction. There were ways Halima could have found out if she was determined. The next morning, I returned to the house, expecting it to be quiet. But the decorations were still there, and the compound reeked of fried meat and spilled alcohol. My key still worked. That was my small relief. Inside, I found empty cups, plastic chairs, and scattered wrappers. It looked like a battlefield after celebration. And then, on the living room wall, I saw it. A framed picture of Halima, smiling proudly in front of the house. My rage was cold this time, not fiery. Because this was no longer about anger, it was about reclaiming what was mine. But as I cleaned the mess, doubt crept in. Would anyone even believe me? To everyone who attended that party, the house belonged to Halima. She had planted the story publicly, and in this society, perception often became truth. If I tried to fight her openly, I'd be painted as envious. And Halima, with her silver tongue, would twist it further. I was caught between two wars, protecting my dignity and reclaiming my home. And in that fragile silence, another thought haunted me. Why did my sister do this? It wasn't just to shine brighter. This was deliberate, invasive, cruel. What did she really want from me? The answer wouldn't come easily. But deep down, I sensed this was just the beginning of something darker. Because Halima didn't just want my house. She wanted to erase me from my own story. And I wasn't ready for how far she was willing to go. The following week was a blur of whispers and side glances. Everywhere I went, to the market, to church, even at work, I felt eyes linger on me. Some offered polite smiles, others smirked knowingly. Word had spread fast. Halima had bought a house. But every time I heard it, it was like a blade twisting deeper. On Wednesday evening, I finally decided to confront her. She was at our mother's house, sitting in the living room, like she owned the air itself. The television hummed in the background, and she was scrolling her phone, one leg crossed over the other. "Halima," I said, my voice firm. She looked up, her smile slow and deliberate. "Ah, Zara. I was wondering when you'd finally talk instead of sulking." I clenched my fists. "Why did you do it? Why did you claim my house as yours?" Her laughter rang out sharp, cutting through the room. "Your house? Really? You think one little bank promotion makes you capable of affording that place? Be serious." My heart thudded painfully. "I have the documents. My name is on the deed." Her expression flickered, just briefly, before hardening again. "And? Who do you think people will believe? The quiet sister who hides everything, or the one who has always stood in the spotlight?" Her words hit like a slap. She leaned forward, lowering her voice. "You've lived your life in shadows, Zara. You thought you could buy a house in silence? You don't deserve it. Not when I've been the one carrying this family's image all these years. People respect me, not you. And now, this house cements it." I stared at her, stunned. This wasn't just jealousy. It was entitlement, deep and poisonous. "Halima, this is theft. It's fraud," I whispered, my voice shaking with both rage and fear. "Then go ahead," she challenged, her lips curling. "Take me to court. Call the police. But by the time you finish fighting, the whole community will already see the house as mine. And you'll be the bitter little sister who couldn't stand my success." Her words sank into me like poison. I realized then the cruel brilliance of her move. She wasn't stealing the house itself. She was stealing the narrative. That night, I couldn't sleep. I paced, my mind racing. Part of me wanted to drag her into the street, to scream the truth until someone listened. But I knew Halima thrived on chaos. If I gave her that scene, she'd twist it until I looked like a villain. So I chose a different path. I went back to the house the next day with a locksmith and changed all the locks. It was petty, maybe, but it was my small act of defiance. I moved in that weekend, carrying only a mattress and a small table. The silence of the house felt heavy, but it was mine again for a moment. Until Sunday morning, when I woke to loud banging on the gate. When I looked out the window, I saw Halima standing there, flanked by two of her friends. She was dressed to perfection, her arms folded, her face hard. "Open this gate," she shouted, her voice carrying down the street. "How dare you lock me out of my own house?" Neighbors peered through their windows. Passers-by stopped, whispering. The stage was set again. I stood frozen at the window, torn between fear and fury. If I opened the gate, she'd storm in and reclaim the performance. If I didn't, I'd look like a thief hiding in my own home. I realized then, this wasn't just about bricks and walls anymore. It was about truth, and the price of defending it. I stood at the window, staring down at Halima pounding on the gate like a queen demanding entry to her throne. Neighbors whispered, some pulling out their phones to record. My stomach churned. This was exactly what she wanted, a spectacle. "Zara!" she shouted again. "I said open this gate before I call the police." I took a deep breath, walked downstairs, and stepped outside. The autumn sun burned against my skin as all eyes turned to me. "This is my house, Halima," I said, loud enough for the street to hear. My voice shook at first, but I steadied it. "I bought it. I worked for it. And I have the documents to prove it." Her friends gasped, whispering. Halima's lips curled into that familiar smirk. "Documents?" she scoffed. "Anyone can print papers. Do you think these people care about your so-called proof? They saw me celebrate here. They know this is mine." I raised my chin. "Then let them see the truth." I walked back inside, returned with the folder, and held up the deed. My name, Zara Musa, was printed in bold. I read it out loud, my voice echoing against the murmurs of the crowd. The neighbors leaned closer, muttering among themselves. Halima's smirk faltered. Still, she didn't back down. "So what?" she snapped. "Even if it's in your name, do you think people will respect you more than me? You've always lived in my shadow. You'll always live there." Her words stung, but in that moment, something shifted inside me. I realized she wasn't just fighting for a house. She was fighting for control. Control she had wielded over me my entire life. Every overshadowed achievement, every stolen moment, every time she had made me feel small. This house was my first act of defiance. And she couldn't stand it. I turned to the onlookers, my hands trembling but my voice steady. "I don't care if you believe me," I said. "I don't need validation anymore. I know the truth. And this house will not be another stage for Halima's lies." I closed the gate in her face. The murmurs rose, but I walked back inside, my heart pounding. For the first time, I felt something stronger than fear. I felt free. Halima didn't stop immediately. She spread rumors, telling anyone who would listen that I had stolen her house, that I was jealous of her success. Some believed her. Others doubted. But over time, the noise faded. The community moved on to new gossip, and the house remained mine. Halima stopped coming by, though I'd sometimes catch her glare at me from across family gatherings. The bond we once had was fractured, maybe beyond repair. It hurt, but not as much as it used to. Because I had finally understood something. Silence is powerful, but silence alone cannot protect you. I had bought the house in secret, believing that keeping quiet would shield my dream. But silence also created a vacuum, one my sister filled with her lies. Sometimes you have to speak. Not for applause, not for validation, but to guard what's yours. And sometimes, family isn't the safe place you think it is. Blood can bind, but it can also choke. I still love my sister, but I no longer live in her shadow. My house became more than a roof over my head. It became a lesson that the truest victories aren't the ones shouted from rooftops or celebrated with balloons. They're the ones you defend, even when no one claps. Because in the end, what matters isn't how loudly others tell your story. It's how courageously you claim your own.